Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle Talk podcast, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the steampunk graphic novel Clockworks, with Tony Salvaggio out right now from Humanoids. This week, Kris Hipps has been a performer and writer and creative director, including at Second City for 6 years. She's had films at various national film festivals, 2 feature horror films under your belt, You're Not Getting Out Alive, and The Monument. But the reason that we are talking to you today is Kris Hipps has written and directed and is bringing back once again a live adaptation of Night of the Living Dead. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you could be here because this really sounds like a blast. Let me tell the audience a little bit about this. Night of the Living Dead is at the Bug Performance and Media Arts Center. It's an annual tradition that takes the classic 1968 film, transports it to the stage. It is a unique combination of film segments and live performance. It's been going on for 8 years, and so apparently this is something that you just bring back every October. So, Kris, how exactly did you want? I don't know if you actually spend your time in Denver, because I know you've done an awful lot you were in Chicago for a long time. So how did this happen? How did you wind up doing an adaptation of Night of the Living Dead?
Well, back in Chicago, a friend of mine and I, we had talked, it just came up one night in conversation. We thought it would be really cool to do a stage version of Night of the Living Dead. Back then in Chicago, this was in like the late 90s, a lot of people were doing adaptations of shows like just different horror films, like older horror films and things like that. We thought Night of the Living Dead would be hilarious to do. It had just gone into public domain, and so we knew we could do it. We never did it, and then somebody else did. So when I came to Denver, when I started working at the Bug Theater, it seemed like the perfect place to bring this project. So a couple of friends and I went ahead and we found the script, the original script, and we also punched it up a little bit with a little bit of comedy and decided that we would stage it, and everything that happened inside the farmhouse would be on stage, and everything that happened outside the house would be recreations of Romero's film scenes. So we filmed in cemeteries and in woods and, threw a bunch of people in zombie things and had people do crazy things like walk out of a lake as a zombie and walk through the woods. And so we just, did all this creepy footage, and it was a huge hit. So we did it again the next year, and then the next year, and this has been going strong ever since.
So what's the tone? If I were to go, and I'm definitely going to go, but the show hasn't even begun yet. It starts in a few days.
Yes.
Well, the original Night of the Living Dead is relentless and grim, and I really love it. But what's the tone of this adaptation? I know that you have a comedy feel.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not quite sure how to ask this. This isn't a satire, or is it a satire? I mean, what is it?
No, not really. I try to stay true to the movie because that movie terrified me as a child. My brother and I used to watch this creature feature every Saturday afternoon called Horror Incorporated. And they would play movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space, which also terrified me as a child. That's the first time I saw Night of the Living Dead. And I try to keep that terror. Our zombies are scary. We have good makeup people. They're not the fast zombies. They're the slow, kind of stumbling zombies that it still doesn't matter how fast you run, they will still get you, which I think is the scariest thing about the slow zombies. Not a big fan of the fast zombies. And I try to keep an element of fear in the show, but every once in a while we break it up with a little bit of humor. I say more like the Scream movies, how they were scary, but then there was also kind of an element of humor. So it's more like Scream than the Wayans Brothers scary movie.
Right.
Which are hilarious satires, but ours is more like the Scream series. It's kind of what I usually compare it to.
A little bit of awareness, a little bit of meta understanding.
Yeah. I mean, it's
when I look at
1960, go over top.
Right. I mean, but when you take in the original film, 1960, and it's definitely worth looking at. In fact, I think it might be fun probably to rescreen the original film sort of before going to the stage adaptation. Actually, would you recommend people do it one way or the other? Would you say, hey, go watch the movie and then come watch ours, or go backwards?
My personal opinion is it's going to be our show will be more entertaining if you have seen the 1968 Romero film, and because there's a lot of jokes, kind of references that we have put in there that the fans of the movie are going to get maybe more than someone who hasn't seen it. It definitely is an ode to the movie and an ode to Romero's work. I think people still enjoy it who haven't seen the movie, but if you know the plot and the story, I think you're going to have more fun.
You know, one thing that I keep thinking about when I watch that film is just the anxiety of the movie. I mean, you know, you think about 1968, when this movie is being filmed, you know, Bobby Kennedy was just shot, Jack Kennedy was shot just a couple of years before, the National Convention, the Democratic National Convention exploded, and there's like thousands of rioters, and there's police sticking dogs on people. I mean, it's this nasty, really rough, nasty time that people are scared, that the world is falling apart. Do you think that anxiety, which I know would be at the forefront of your mind if you were watching it live in 1968, do you think that anxiety translates to today, or is it an opportunity for you as a writer?
You know, I honestly didn't take a lot of that into consideration, and I know people have a lot of theories about Night of the Living Dead and where it came from, and we know where a lot of it came from. And, you know, I've heard also, too, about the hideous images that people were seeing on the news from Vietnam, you know, things like that. And I think, you know, some people, I don't know if it has the same impact. I still think it's one of the scariest films ever made. And, you know, but with our we're jaded now. You know, we've got the Saw movies and we've got the Hostel movies, and we've seen all the torture and the blood, and how many versions of a decapitation can you come up with, you know. But the thing I love about the Romero film is the noir look, the black and white, the shadows, the fact that these things are coming for you and you cannot get away from them. It's not an overly gory movie. I mean, it's some moments, definitely, you know, like when they're fighting over intestines and things like that. But I think a lot of people want to go back to that because it's like, okay, been there, done that with so much in horror that I feel there's a huge movement of people wanting to just go back to the creepy, the scary. Maybe what you don't see is more frightening than what you do. And that's what I'm kind of trying to do with the stage version too. Is we have the zombies come out amongst the audience, and we get shrieks, we get screams, we get, you know, when they're out there, and I like bringing them like across the front row of the stage and down the aisles because it does creep people out, which is delicious.
Wow. So you've been doing the show for 8 years. I mean, do you perform in the show as well, or are you just directing?
I do. I used to just play a zombie in the show because I loved playing a zombie, and I played Helen for several years, which is Harry's wife, Karen's mother. And then this year I passed the torch to someone else to play Helen, and I'm doing some smaller, more fun roles, which is easier when you're directing. It's harder when you're directing, taking on a prominent role in the show. So I'm doing some fun stuff.
I mean, the character of Helen, her great horror is, you know, I don't want to give too much away, but when a member of her family dies, she's faced with this just fundamental inversion, this terrible horror. I mean, how seriously do you take that? Do you play that up for all the pathos in it, or is there a tendency to taper it off? I mean, what do you do with that?
We made Helen a little bit more. I don't really want to give away any secrets, but Helen's death in the film is definitely, I think, the most brutal of all. And we have taken that brutality and softened it with a bit of comedy. It's still brutal, but I don't want to give away any secrets, but what is used to kill Helen in our production that definitely adds a little comic relief to her death, even though it's still bloody, and Harry's death is very bloody. We do take the blood over the top. We go through gallons of Caro syrup blood. And so I like to keep the horror of the deaths, but add a little lightness to them.
So you've got three couples, basically. And you know, at base, I can see how the movie could be a play pretty well, because you've basically got three couples in various parts of a house, but mostly in the living room of a house.
Yes.
You know, you've got Ben and Barbara, who have just wandered into the house, each of them fleeing this strange sudden thing that's going on. You've got the married couple, who must strike you in 2016 as being pretty 1950s. I mean, they were pretty darn traditional even in 1968. And then you've got the young couple, and I assume you've still got them who are like, you know.
Oh yes.
Here to be like
we keep all the original characters, and you know, I try to keep that. I want the audience to be a little sad that Tom and Judy are doomed to the fate that they're doomed to, and that scene wasn't one of the most fun to shoot.
How the hell do you
and
do
it
that?
always is every year.
When what happens to Tom and Judy happens, how exactly do you? How do you stage?
Film. It's all on film and some ridiculous pyrotechnics that always get a strong audience reaction. So it's one of the high moments in the show, definitely. And we put it right before intermission, so it's the big, you know, kind of climax before we go into intermission, and then we go back to, you know, more of things are getting more intense, and we add our own. Like film segments of what's going on outside of the house also.
Wow.
Another thing we do, too, is to keep it fresh. A few years ago, I started adding themes. A few years ago, our theme was Halloween, and everything took place on Halloween, so we got to have, like, trick-or-treaters eaten by zombies and, you know, Halloween party guests eaten by zombies. And then last year we did classic monsters, so we had Bride of Frankenstein zombie. We had, you know, Plan 9 from Outer Space people in there with the zombies, Thor and Vampira, and you know, threw in a lot of classic monster references. We had, you know, Jason and Mike Myers type characters, and then this year it's urban legends. So we have blended urban legends in with the Night of the Living Dead story, and that's my most fun every year. Well, we, you know how we have a scene where some babysitters are conjuring up Bloody Mary. Well, what if Bloody Mary was a zombie? So that kind of thing.
How do you get these new scenes into the Night of the Living? This is fascinating. I'm totally. You mean in the context of Night of the Living Dead?
I write them, and then like the scene. Well, every year we open with the same scene. In the movie, they find this old woman up at the top of the stairs who's completely chewed up and dead. We have always started out our production with, how did the old lady up at the stairs get killed? We've had old lady knitting quilting bee gone bad. We've had old lady male stripper party gone bad. We've had, you know, old lady Tupperware party gone bad.
This is brilliant. That's great.
We started out with, and like last year for Classic Monsters, I took some stuff from The Ghost and Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts and this group of spiritualist ladies. And so these old ladies that are having this spiritualist meeting, and then zombies show up and everything goes bad. And then we always have the woman at the top of the stairs. She comes back later. So that's something that I added in that Romero didn't have in his film.
That's wonderful.
You know,
I mean, by the way, extra points for remembering The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, honestly.
One of my favorites. I'm a huge horror fan. I've seen everything, and that's one of my all-time favorites. Cheesy as it is.
Have you heard of Romero's Season of the Witch? And is this remotely familiar to you? I mean,
I have not.
Okay.
But I need to. I need to find that film because I did not know about it, and I'm embarrassed to say that I.
No. Don't be embarrassed. I've been hosting a horror show for like 5 years, and I never knew about this movie until like 6 weeks ago. But I came across this. I can't remember where, and somehow it wound up in my hands. 1970. You would probably really dig this, okay? Because it's Romero. It's 1973. Somehow he's like read Sympathy for Dan or something, and he comes up with this amazing story about this like full-on suffering 1970s housewife of a traveling salesman, key party kind of universe, right? And she's so bored that she decides she's going to become a witch, and it is wonderful. And it might even be in the public domain. I don't know, but I'm just saying, you sound like somebody who should check this out. Like if you dug Night of the Living Dead, I definitely recommend the season of The Witch.
I do need to, because I pride myself on, like, my litmus test for horror films is, have you seen a horror film called Equinox? Is what I usually ask people.
Equinox.
And Equinox. If they've seen Equinox, then I know they're a hardcore fan just like me, and then I'm very happy.
Yes, I know of Equinox. I've seen the ads for it, and that's about as good as I can get. But gosh, okay. So the Bug Theater is in Denver, Colorado. The show is Night of the Living Dead. You wrote and have directed it once again, and it gets great reviews every year. I know it'll be very crowded, but people definitely need to check it out. I'm sort of very excited to see it, and I'm really glad that you took the time to talk to me about it. Before we go, where can you tell people to go if they want to find out more about the show or want to get tickets?
You go to the Bug Theater's website, www.bugtheatre, and it's theatre.org. Tickets are on brown paper tickets. We have a Facebook page, Night of the Living Dead Denver, where we've got a lot of fun stuff, backstage photos, and some ridiculous, a lot of urban legend postings for urban legends that we have incorporated into the show, and some fun cast photos. So that's a happy place to go, happy bloody place to go.
Excellent. All right, Kris Hipps, thank you so much for talking to me. I hope you have a fantastic show, and I can't wait to see it. And that's it. I will hopefully see you in a few days at the actual theater.
Great. Thank you. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.